I was 19 when my husband and I, Shirley, moved from Belfast to Manchester because of not being able to get employment. We lived in one little room. We got married at St. Alphonsus with only a few people there, 1962, and moved from one little room to a bedsit on Moss Lane East with one baby. And I gave birth to my second child 3 years later in the same bedsit.
I came here in the September, and then it was partly foggy at the time. I never know what it was. And then in the October, it starts with the snow. And my friends did some tricks with me with the snow. And we had a community then in Mosscare because many West Indians did live in the Mosscare area at the time. And we had many, many pubs in which we could go and sit and talk to and reminisce of times past.
It was a good area. People were very friendly. There was no violence, there was no robberies. There was nothing like that. And people were poor. They were just hardworking, but helped each other, and nobody had much money.
Exciting, vibrant community. The big sort of memories around Alexandra Road, really, which was buzzing in the sort of early 70s, 80s, were the old traditional sort of smaller shops and music shops and food shops and meat shops, and very strong West Indian community. You know, I always felt at home. It's just lots of stories, lots of fun. I think the place felt it was like it was always summer.
They've gone through difficult times, particularly when it's the 70s and so on. Manchester decided on its improving its housing and ended up knocking a third of the city down.
Moss West having been demolished, there was then the question of what would happen to the rest of Moss, now old Moss. And in fact, everybody thought the same thing was going to happen again, and it was just a matter of time before the people would come round with their clipboards and decide that they needed to demolish the rest of Moss. But in fact, somebody from some planners came, and they had a map of Moss which showed everything from Princess Road through across to Rushholme, and it said capable of improvement.
The area itself, Moss Lane East, was all terraced houses. We had a bathroom, we had a toilet, we had a big air raid shelter in the back. It was very, very decrepit, an old sink, an old geyser on the wall, hot water geyser. When Mosscare moved us out to Cadogan Street, which is near the park here, I lived Moulton Street. We were away for so many weeks, and when we came back, it was like Buckingham Palace. All new cupboards and new kitchen units and a shower, and the area shelter had gone, or my little den had gone, and it was just beautiful. There was plenty of happiness in the area. There was a massive couple of pubs. The Robin Hood was that's the centre. Saturday night, you had to get dressed up to get in. You did not go in looking, and you had to get in early to get a seat. And there used to be entertainment and a piano, and it was vibrant. And we all mingled, and the children in Moulton Street, there were 72 children in Moulton Street, and they all went to the same school. So you can imagine what it was like in the morning.
You always had your elders around watching over you, and if you were misbehaved on the street, your parents would find out, because they would tell your parents. So that was a bit of a kept us in on track, really, I suppose, the best way to describe it. And there seemed to be a lot more respect for the elders.
There was a lot of clubs in the area, illegal clubs, which had a knock on the door, and you only got in if they knew your face, you know. And this is called shebeens, they called them, you know, in that day. But all in all, Moss Side was Moss Side, and I love it.
During the 60s, quite a lot of the West Indian community we have now moved over when the government invited them to come and help staff the hospitals and the transport systems and so on.
I started at Princess Road Depot there as a conductor, and then I progressed to a driver. And from a driver, we had what we call inspector. Then there were various grades of inspectors, and I became a section inspector. And from that, I became a garage manager.
I think diversity is important in every community. I think Mosscare does it well because we have everyone mixing with everybody. There's no segregation, there's no racism, there's nothing like that, because people have grown to understand each other. So we understand our neighbours. We know our neighbours might be different from us, but I understand what goes on, their culture, what's allowed, what isn't allowed, because we've made it our business to know about each other.
There was a big Irish community, Polish community. Predominantly, it was a West Indian community. People saw that as a strength within Mosscare, that the communities came together. There wasn't any, I don't recall any issues and situations where people from different communities were against each other.
Give us any reason to get out there and dance, eat food, break bread with each other and socialise. That everybody's out in whether it's a street party or whether it's in the parks or like the major carnivals and stuff like that. That draws a lot of people into Manchester. We're always, as residents of Mosscare and as community members of Central South Manchester in particular, we do make sure that we get involved and we embrace culture.
I think one of the strengths of Mosscare is the welcoming nature of the different communities that live here. And if you go, there's been so many different communities that have come to Mosscare for whatever reason. I can think of the work we've done with the Polish Catholic Church, bringing local older Polish people together in a shelter scheme just on Moss Lane East. All the people that came across from the Caribbean in the 50s and settling here, many of them still here now. We did a fantastic scheme when Montserrat had the volcano in, I think it was 1996, 97, where because of the local Montserrat community that lived here, we developed a link back to Montserrat, and we're rehousing people from there to here so they could be near to their family connections over here. And I'm now seeing the children of those families that came over still living in the accommodation but going on to university, and all those good things that have happened to those families, but a huge life-changing experience for them. So I think the area is very diverse but is very welcoming at the same time.
There's something about the place which people sort of feel this is a place where I can settle and where my own particular sort of cultural identity can be upheld, and yet also valued as I valued my neighbour's identity as well.
We all worked together and they went to school together. My children, most of their friends were of different ethnic, Asian, black community, and they're still friends. They were friendly. They all went to the same clubs together. There was no animosity. There was no difference.
One thing that I've got from living in Mosscare and having grown up in the area is community is key, and without the community, we've not got anything.
Mosscare was founded largely by the United Churches in Mosscare, and Jerry Wheel, who's a very significant leader in the Mosscare history and the Mosscare history too, but also by other people who were prepared to work with the principles and the ideas.
We came in '62 and Brian Jackson at the Methodist Church and Brian Tucker at the Baptist Church and one of the other ministers in the area, and they were all very concerned with the state of the area and how the church could engage and help. And they'd heard about housing associations, but they were a new thing. But they thought that if they could do this, then it would help to improve the area, because the area was run down and it had been hit by all sorts of problems.
I think it's important for me to register why Mosscare was founded back in 1967 and what was happening back then. If you again go to Alexandra Park, all the old terrace streets the other side of Princess Road were being demolished, and people were being displaced throughout the city, but outside of the city as well. So in a way, the houses were being demolished, but the communities were being sort of broken up.
Most of them, I think, were privately rented houses with landlords who hadn't done anything to improve them, and largely they were without indoor bathrooms and hot water and so on, and landlords hadn't done anything to them. So the area was just in limbo, as it were. So the idea was to try and help and raise some money and start improving some houses. These 5 churches who in the area that thought it was a good idea to try this all gave £50, and so that's what they started off with, about £250. And then people from the parishes got involved as volunteers, and there are still some people who volunteered then and are still volunteers now, 50 years later, and they bought their first house in Whalley Range, and the tenant who moved in is still there.
Mosscare was just at the point when it really needed a staff member, and they had to decide, are we just going to say with 40 houses and flats, which we will run as volunteers, or are we going to try and get bigger? So they made the decision to get bigger, and it was sort of employing me was the action that did it. And what they did was they took me, a raw recruit, and they said, right, we'll send you off for the professional training, but we are going to teach you what we have developed and what we have learned. And that was really lessons from the clearance process. And the founders of Mosscare said, perhaps you can do housing differently. Perhaps you can do housing in a way that provides a high quality service, but recognises individuals.
Those early days were great, and we all mucked in together, and you went out into the community. So you'd visit everyone who applied for a property from Mosscare. So it was great. So you connected with that person from the very beginning in their home, and then you'd see when they move into your home how that had changed, how they furnished each room when you go around and visit. So it was great.
When I first came, it was being run out of somebody's upstairs spare room. And there just came a time where that person said, no, that's it. Come this afternoon, take the files. So that's when all the files were taken to a room in a building on this site. And then there was this amazing thing appeared in the world, which was called Pet Rat, a computer program for managing housing association stock. So we got one of these. So we actually sort of wheeled the computer into the cupboard at night, and we wheeled, this is the one computer that we had because it was only the one PC, wheeled it out into the room and set the rooms out. And it just kind of worked. And then when we put everything away, the brownies came in, or the girls' brigade, or the dancing class. So, you know, you had to be prepared to do that if you worked here.
It was a very small beer to begin with, and we used to go and collect the rents, didn't we? You and I have done it, haven't we? Yeah. Pam, you'd get a call and somebody'd say, we've got a few people waiting, and, you know, we'd go and see them, wouldn't we? And it was that was interesting. I remember going up these tall blocks of flats, and with these youths looking down on us and thinking, wow. Pam and I left our handbags in the local police station because we weren't sure what was happening up there, and then had to go and pick them up when we'd been and done the interview. So it was slightly, you know, it had its moments, there's no doubt. I went to somebody in Range Road, and I can still picture this red-haired Scottish lady who had an absolute screaming child. And I said in the end, you know, what's the matter with him? And she said, oh, I've told him he's had his tea, but I'm afraid I haven't got anything for his tea. So this child is, you know, obviously hungry. And I thought, golly, you know,
poverty of that sort.
This is really poverty, isn't it? And also realised that it needed more time from visitor than I had.
'81 was the year of the riots, because there were riots sort of. They started off in Brixton, and there was like a real ripple. You know, it was a summertime, and it was, you knew that something was going to happen. You did. It kind of it just heated up. You could tell something was going to happen, and it did. And you know, we were here the day before the riots, and we were here the day after the riots. And in fact, Jerry, of course, was the minister, Church of England minister for this geographical area. And I remember walking along with him along Princess Road when so many of the properties, the shops, had been damaged. And that was really quite an emotional time.
There was negative press, there was shooting, there was drugs being sold in the area. But Mosscare committed to the area and continued to invest in the area and working with the community, because all that negativity, what was working, it was only a small handful of people. There was still a lot of good people in the community.
Yes, there were issues in Moss Side, but they tended to be blown up out of all proportion. If there was a shooting in Moss Side, and then the week later there was a shooting in Salford or somewhere else, you didn't really hear very much about the one in Salford at all. The one in Moss Side was front page news, and it was just blown out of all proportion because the area had really negative stereotypes.
Many youngsters were getting killed, and it would appear to them that the police was not finding the culprits, so to speak. But I think it is fair to say there was a wall of silence to some extent, because people were afraid of saying, if they know it was, to report that person because of fear of retaliation.
The feeling was, what are we going to do? You know, you were frightened to come out, and you didn't know when there was going to be a shot going, or you were just frightened to go into the market, which was just there. It's closed now, Moss Side Market. People were frightened to go in there. People were frightened to go down Alexandra Parkway, where these gangs were living. And it was, or even Alexandra Park, you couldn't bring your child through there because you didn't know what was going to happen. So all in all, it was a frightening experience.
I see Moss Side as a really positive place, and I think one of the main reasons for that are the people that live here and the commitment those communities, those people have got to that neighbourhood. And they suffer in a way adversely through the negative publicity the area's got or has had in the past. And throughout the time I've been here, we've been always trying to promote the positive side of the area, of the people in the area, and the work that we actually do. And I think we've been very successful in doing that.
I think we seem to have quelled it. The police, I think, have quelled it. And the people have stood up and said, we've had enough. We don't want this. These are young men that are men and women that are being injured and dead, dying. We don't want that in the community. You know, let us live in peace.
There were groups that came out, such as Mothers Against Violence, Manchester Active Voices, and they were started by people, quite a lot of people that had experienced huge tragedy in their lives, and they wanted to do something positive with that experience, and quite a few of those groups are still going now and campaigning and supporting vulnerable people, and it's fantastic.
We always see ourselves as working in partnerships and not just about doing things ourselves. Without doubt, the local authority are a major stakeholder and influence what happens in neighbourhoods. We do a lot of supported housing schemes for women and children fleeing violence, and we will work with partner women's groups to develop those refuges. We've done a scheme with Walking with the Wounded, providing for homeless people who were in the forces, who were living on the streets, who've now got 6 flats with support and with good quality accommodation.
I think they were well known because they did innovate Going back to 1999, housing associations managed social rented houses and built social rented houses. That's what they did. There were a number of innovative ones that were working with local authorities, with private sector, to do different things. And Mosscare was one of the few housing associations that did do that innovation.
We've done a fair amount of refurbishment work in the recent past on the Stockport estates for Mossbank homes. We also did a number of properties up at Carbrook, which was a cooperative stock transfer to Mosscare. Part of their success has been very much the community engagement with the local residents and communities they work with, and we've been active partners and supporters throughout that time on the refurbishment projects. And on the new build projects, we've been equally involved in engaging with the local community, tell them about the projects we're going to undertake and how they can participate.
They're very sort of involving, that they clearly care about their client base, their tenants, the community, and that rubs off on everyone they come into contact with, really. So, you like to feel that you're assisting them and helping them with their wider aims.
25 years ago, nobody wanted to live in Mosside. The properties were boarded up, sealed up, the streets echoed, but Mosscare invested money into the properties by providing security doors, double glazing, alarms and central heating, and basically turn the area around and encourage people to live in the area.
I am community minded and I like to help wherever possible can. And I decided that I would give something back to the community. I got involved with Mosscare, worked myself through up to the board level, and I was able to assist the board when they are doing their planning and distribution of houses to various communities that were in Mosside at the time.
There was an estate in Mosside just up the road here, about a quarter of a mile up the road, called the Footballers' Estate, and that was often called the sort of forgotten estate of the local area, and the city decided to take it out of their bigger stock transfer programme and enable it to come across to Mosscare, and that's been really successful in terms of working with a whole range of communities on that estate, investing in the homes, investing in community facilities, doing a lot of work with them from a community's perspective, working with the local schools, and again the renovation of that estate just up the road has been a catalyst to part of the regeneration of the wider Mosside area.
I think Mosscare on the whole have managed to keep this community at an even keel, and by their work and efforts in doing what they're doing, they are trying to bring communities together in all different ways by organising away days, fundraising, getting young apprentices on board from all different nationalities, diversity.
Mosscare put an event on one day in the park next to me, and I thought, wow, that's quite nice to engage the community and get them involved. And I spoke to one of the workers who was in the park, and all I said to her is, what work is Mosscare doing for the young people in the community? And she went away with that, and 3 to 4 days later she contacted me. We had a meeting, and that's when Mosscare said, well, you could be our youth ambassador for Mosscare.
We've got young women who are the daughters of tenants who have set up a local paper, the Nubian Times, which is 3 really entrepreneurial young women who are running a big business in the neighbourhood.
Mosscare were one of our first clients. They said, no, it's a great idea, we definitely need it. You're going door to door in our areas, our residents will be able to communicate using the newspaper. So they booked 12-month campaigns off the bat, and it aided us to be here now. So we've got a team of over 30 odd people, and yeah, it's just gone from strength to strength.
We've done a lot with the Somali community. Again, in the very early days of Somali refugees coming across to us, to this country, we set up a whole range of schemes to provide them with good quality accommodation, but the right levels of support that was, tailored to their cultural needs.
The first thing we did is to register a charity as a Somali group in Mossad, and we registered the charity. And this charity here was the one that had direct contact with Mosscare. And this relationship has developed in the meantime, and we were consulted on each and everything they were doing for the tenants as a whole, but also for the Somalis in particular.
I love working, and I'm very proud of what Mosscare have done, because where other people were sceptical, they didn't want to work in Mossad, and people used to say, how on earth do you want to work in Mossad? So I said, well, I want to help the community, I want to make a difference, and that's what Mosscare is all about, making a difference to people's lives.
It's building this organisation in terms of it feels as though it wants to support the community in a way which is very much like a family. And the attitude of the staff and the way in which this building is used always reminds me of that kind of quality. In an organisation which is rapidly expanding and becoming much more influential, and how can you retain some of those core values within the expanding organisation, to me is the biggest challenge for Mosscare's next 50 years.
I have a strong belief that Mosscare is good. I think it's a good organisation, but what we're particularly good is when we're rising to a challenge of doing something that is taking a risk, doing things a bit different. And although we're only just under 5,000 units, that journey of getting to that point has meant we've done some really exciting and challenging things that have brought risk. The stock transfers, the setting up our own direct labour team, they're all examples of where we're not just standing still, we're rising to a challenge.